I'm Alfred Sanchez. I'm the president and CEO of the Greater Miami Chamber of Commerce. I want to welcome you today to our discussion about the critical housing needs and programs during COVID, how government is responding, and what relief programs are still available out there to owners and developers. An extremely important topic of conversation as we all begin to really settle into the new normal and start to look at what is that going to look like in the future. Our webinar is produced by the Chamber's Workforce Housing Committee, led by Dr. Willie Logan and AJ Meyer. It is, pardon me, is generally, it's also presented by our generous sponsors, CareerSource South Florida, Opelika Community Development Corporation, Wells Fargo, and NAF Construction Group. Look, we have an impressive and distinguished panel with us today. We're going to talk about, everything that had to do with COVID, how it's affected developers, how government has stepped in to help tenants as well as developers, and what more needs to be done, and what dollars are still available out there at all levels of government. So I think it's an informative program that will hopefully lead to some better times for many of us around the Zoom room here. Greater Miami Chamber, through our help desk, call center, if you will, has taken an active role in helping small businesses move through the various application processes and now the loan forgiveness process for PPP. If you're a small business and you need assistance, I encourage you to visit our chamber website. Hopefully one of the staff can drop the link in the chat, but it's www.miamichamber.com/GMCC-cares. The program is called GMCC Cares, and that page will show you all the various different resources available, one of which I want to highlight because it's an extremely important program that kind of covers what others are not covering, and that's the CareerSource South Florida Layoff Aversion Fund. These are grants that are made possible through CareerSource, and the Chamber's partnering with CareerSource to help award these grants of up to $10,000 to small businesses that have been in business for at least 2 years here in Miami-Dade, 3 to 50 employees, and you have to have qualifying expenses that you have already incurred. This is sort of a refund, a way to give back the money that you've already spent in order to pivot your business so that you can keep your workforce active and employed. So you're going to need receipts, but all the details are on the miamichamber.com/GMCC dash cares. So look, before we get started, because we have a great program, I want to go through some of the logistics. As you notice, everybody's on mute, and there is the chat box that's open. It's there for you to engage with one another, ask clarifying questions. But if you have a question you want to ask the panel, please drop it in our Q&A. Only those questions are going to be floated up to the panel, so it's very important that you put it into the Q&A. The webinar is being recorded, and we're going to make that available later on our website. So if you've missed anything, or you want to go back and review, or you want to share with some of your friends, please visit our website a little later on. As usual, these kind of events, they're free to everybody, and they're made possible really through the generosity of some incredible sponsors. We're not government funded, we're privately funded. So, without them, we really wouldn't be able to do this. So let me thank them, and let me bring up the first of our sponsors from Wells Fargo Bank. Please welcome Pat Morris. He's the Vice President of Community Affairs for South Florida. Pat's a longtime Chamber board member and an extremely good friend of mine. He chairs our nonprofit committee. Pat, let me give you a few seconds there.
Alfred, thank you so much. On behalf of Wells Fargo, I'm sitting in Cafe Demetrio in Coral Gables virtually, enjoying some coffee and saying hello to you all today. Wells Fargo is so proud of our partnership over many, many years and sponsorship of the Greater Miami Chamber. Today, we're dealing with an issue that we work closely with many of you on this call, and many of the folks will be listening and looking in, are partners in the housing affordability space in our community. On behalf of my good friend Leo Toka, our Wells Fargo Community Development Officer, we are very, very proud today to ask our good friend Rulon Washington, who is the Vice President for the East Region our market leader in housing affordability philanthropy, to bring some remarks on behalf of Wells Fargo. Rulon is one of my very good friends at work, and his team's purpose is to perform the coordinated outreach that mitigates financial and reputational risk in housing markets with the greatest need throughout the East. So with that, I'm going to let Rulon jump on. Rulon, thanks for joining us virtually from Orlando.
Yeah,
Thank you for being here.
Matt. Thanks, man. Those kind words, they always make me smile, right? And also thank you all for all of the great work being done by your organization. It's a pleasure spending this time today and benefit from the discussion of such a critical topic. And so I was thinking today, going back the first few weeks of April of this year, it was hard to get a true understanding of what we were up against. But, as a company, we understood that 2020 would be a unique year, and we have a responsibility to not only support our customers, but also support the needs of the communities that we serve. So since that time, from a mortgage perspective, we've encouraged any homeowner impacted financially by COVID-19 to reach out to Wells Fargo, but not only to Wells Fargo, but to their specific mortgage servicer to understand what assistance is available, because understanding the options are really key. And that's something that, we've been impacted with before during the housing crisis. And so I think we're battle tested. So currently we have close to about 130,000 Wells Fargo mortgage customers in South Florida. And only about 13% of those customers are requesting assistance on their mortgage up until the end of September, which leads us to believe that we can do more to educate both our customers and our community partners on how the forbearance process works and what protections come along with it. I feel that it's important for me to make sure that I intrigue the audience to opt in if you still need that help, right? There's still assistance available for folks who need that payment relief. And Wells Fargo, along with some other mortgage servicers, are suspending all property foreclosures for the remainder of the year. And that's really important for the audience to understand, is that as a bank, this process has been pretty streamlined for the industry. So in addition to assisting our mortgage customers, we understand that the pandemic has also highlighted the difficulties faced for those who rent. So unfortunately, there are limited protections, as you all may know, to support folks facing eviction, particularly in the state of Florida, despite some of the governor's moratoriums and the CDC agency orders. So knowing this, as a company, we took our first step in May to expand how we support housing, and we provided close to $10 million in grants to HUD certified housing counseling agencies in an effort to help renters and homeowners stay housed through the pandemic. And so the following month, we took it a step further. We went a bit deeper, and we created a housing stability grant, which funded over $5 million to 15 legal assistance organizations to help those renters who are facing eviction. And the goal of that grant was to help organizations build more capacity, enhance their technology, and to really support some of the outreach initiatives that they have going on in their market to support renters. And one of the grantees is actually an organization you all may be familiar with, Greater Miami Legal Services, really well-known organization in Miami-Dade. So we understand the importance of free legal assistance to those impacted by the pandemic, specifically in South Florida. So as we thought about what we can provide, we also need to understand the additional resources that are out there to help stabilize housing. Albert, I heard you mention this a bit earlier, but just kind of thinking about the municipal state relief programs across the state, it's critical that a mortgage servicer understand those as well too, so that way they can empower some of their homeowners and their customers to take advantage of some of those funds. So it's a true partnership with the goal to meet the housing needs of the community. So in short, there's still a lot of work to do. And I like to say thank you again to Greater Miami Chamber of Commerce for creating this platform, because I truly believe the intentional collaboration leads to real solutions. And partnership is more important than ever. As a company, Wells Fargo, supporting opportunities like today helps us build a deeper connection for a bigger purpose. So we'd like to say thank you.
I think you need to let me come back up there, Steph. There we go. Okay, there we go. I was commenting earlier behind the screen that we ought to take these outtakes and put them into a blooper reel and show them after all this. Listen, I want to thank our friends at Wells Fargo. Pat, Rulon, thanks for those great comments. And I want to bring up another good friend of the Chambers and of mine, our Chambers Chair-elect, Rick Beasley, who when we give him a bit of time off every once in a while, he moonlights as the Executive Director of Career Source South Florida. Please welcome my good friend, Rick Beasley. Rick.
Well, good afternoon to everyone. And Alfred, I first want to thank you and your staff and the wonderful work you all have been doing during this pandemic. To Pat and to Ruline, thank you for the efforts that Wells Fargo has provided to this great community that we live in. Then I also want to thank our chairman for this committee, Dr. Willie Logan, and then AJ Meyer. We want to thank you for what y'all are doing and putting on this wonderful event today for us to have this discussion to see how we can help build and enhance affordable workforce housing in this crisis and how we can assist. So on behalf of Career Source South Florida, first, let me just say again, thank you to the Chamber. Alfred had mentioned to everyone that Career Source South Florida launched an initiative that really assisted employers throughout. We launched the very first time that we've done this, our layoff aversion fund. And we've had over 1,019 employers apply for grant opportunities to help keep their company afloat. And those 1,000 employers employ over 11,000 workers. And the grants they applied for would save over 9,200 jobs. So let me first say that we thank those employers for their efforts that can continue to keep people employed. But Career Source has been able to, at this point in time, be able to approve well over close to 300 of those applications, been able to save roughly about 2,400 jobs out of the 2,000, close to 3,000 jobs that we've approved. And so for every dollar that we spend, we're able to generate $96 million of salaries back into this community. So programs like this enable our small businesses to stay afloat, to hire, to keep folks working, which helps them keep in their homes, which is important. Career Source not only launched this program, I want to say that through the efforts of our board and other partners, we launched Operation Impact. And that program there again is to assist our job seekers who lost their jobs, who had trouble and difficulty finding resources because of the unemployment system failing. What we've done here, and we continue to have this program. So if you know of anyone who continues to need assistance, not only with small business, because again, that program still operating by Operation Impact is going. And that program provides up to $1,000 to assist those individuals who've been laid off with their housing, with a car note, with childcare, even utilities, up to $1,000. It's our way. And so I can tell you we've served and been able to help over 400 families in this community. Our goal there, not only to assist them in that regard, but also to get them placed in employment. And so we've launched that program. Please visit our website, Career Source South Florida. We think this conversation today is very important. Why? Because affordable housing is very important to keep a family and a community thriving. Career Source South Florida's role there is to assist individuals to find employment, to help employers find talent, to keep people working, to keep our community thriving. And so with that, again, I want to thank our chairman and you all's leadership of having this discussion. We want to thank the Chamber of Commerce and what they're doing for our community, because again, Alfred and the staff just jumped forth and provided resources to the business community. Then we partner with them to provide it. And so I do want to mention our other partners. So please go to Career Source South Florida, www.careersourcesouthflorida SFL. But our great partners with the Greater Miami Chamber of Commerce, the Beacon Council, Chemical, and our good friends over at Tools for Change. Again, if you have employers who are needing assistance, please apply. We've just, again, invested an additional $1.5 million of resources to that program. So we look forward to continue this conversation. We look forward to helping this community, and we look forward to making our community much better. So thank you.
Thanks, Rick. I mean, it's a really important program, this layoff aversion fund, because while PPP and the others focus on the payroll aspect of it, this is all the other stuff that you've done as a business to ensure that you keep your employees, and that's the bottom line. Listen, and Rick mentioned there were a lot of other organizations partnering with them, and we're extremely proud to be among those. I think we've approved over 500, and we're looking 100,000, and we're looking to do even more. So please, there are a lot of resources out there right now that people aren't using. This is one of them. Avail yourself of them. Thanks again, Rick, and thank you to CareerSource for loaning us your wisdom, your time, and your talent. Lastly, let's hear from our great supporters at the Opa-locka Community Development Corporation. And with us today is their COO, Nikisha Williams. Nikisha, it's my pleasure to turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, and thank you for hosting this very important conversation. I just want to spend a few minutes telling you about the Opa-locka Community Development Corporation. So we are a nonprofit that's been around for 40 years. The work that we do is all about transforming under-resourced communities into vibrant, desirable, engaged neighborhoods. And we do this through social services, employment, education, and health. But we also do this by supporting small business owners through economic development. So we do that with technical assistance and loans. One of our subsidiaries is actually a CDFI, which allows us to provide this technical assistance and loans. But we also do it through affordable housing and development. We build and preserve affordable housing. We've renovated existing units. And I would say even recently with COVID-19, we've really combined our social services to provide the support that the families in affordable housing units need to get through this pandemic and get through this crisis. And so we've really been well positioned to not only take the work that we've been doing for so long, but bringing it directly to folks in affordable housing, in our affordable housing units. And so as we look at the next 40 years, we're really interested in coming up with innovative solutions that will help address the affordable housing crisis in South Florida. And we're very interested in continuing to support the families that live there through enhanced social services, whether it be employment, whether it be health, whether it be financial support through emergency assistance. And so we're really excited about this conversation. Again, thank you for having us. And we feel it's incredibly timely, and it's the work that we continue to do because we believe in this community. And it takes organizations like ours, be it Wells Fargo, CareerSource, to continue to make a difference. So thank you.
Thank you, Nikisha. That's truer words have been said, and we're really glad to have such a talented team over at the Opa-locka Community Development Corporation, none the least of which is our moderator for today, the chair of the Chamber's Workforce Housing Committee, Dr. Willie Logan. Willie is the founder of the Opa-locka Community Development Corporation, and he served as the CEO and president since 1980. In addition to that work at the CDC, at the OLCDC, he served in the Florida House before that from 82 to 2000. And before that, he was mayor of Opa-locka from 80 to 82. This is a man who cares a great deal about his community, about the people who live in it, and he's shown it through many, many years of dedicated public service. He earned his PhD in economic development from Southern New Hampshire University and his MBA and bachelor here at the U in Miami. And he's there right now as an adjunct professor teaching in the School of Architecture. Dr. Willie Logan, my good friend, welcome, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Alfred, and good afternoon, everyone. Let me first give a shout out to our leadership at the Greater Miami Chamber. For decades have been the most important business organization in this community, has always been on the forefront, ensuring that businesses in Miami-Dade County and those who are interested in doing business in Miami-Dade County has an organization that always would have its interests best at heart. We're very delighted to have Commissioner Higgins with us this afternoon. We thank her. We're delighted that we have such distinguished panelists. I know we're ready to get started, and so I'm going to go ahead and move to introduce my dear friend, Dr. Ned Murray, who has served in this community for almost as long as I have. Dr. Murray, whom I'm sure we all know as Associate Director of the Jorge Perez FIU Metropolitan Center. Dr. Murray has over 25 years of professional and academic experience in city planning, housing, and economic development. He holds a PhD in urban and regional planning from the University of Massachusetts at Amherst and is a professionally certified planner with the APA, the American Planning Association. Dr. Murray is also a leading expert in the area of economic development, and Housing Market Analysis. And we've seen the many reports that have come from that institution that has informed this community as well as our government leaders on where we are as it relates to meeting these needs. Without any further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce our moderator, Dr. Ned Murray. Welcome, Dr. Murray.
Thank you very much, Willie. And so glad to be here. Thank you to the Greater Miami Chamber of Commerce for inviting me to moderate this session, and I'm really excited to do so. Just seeing the list of speakers, let us do it this way. I'm going to introduce all the speakers in terms of their bio sketches right up front, and then as each speaker finalizes their presentation, I will welcome once again the following speaker. We should have plenty of time for discussion, a lot of questions. Some of these questions are already coming in, I see. So I think we should have a really good exchange after our final speaker. I may myself add one or two questions or do a follow-up to one of the questions that are asked from our participants. But I'm sure that this will be a very engaging and very thoughtful exchange. So let me begin by offering you the bio sketches for our first presenters. And let me say this is a great selection of speakers because you're getting four really interesting perspectives, four critical perspectives when it comes to the issue of affordable housing. Our first speaker is Commissioner Eileen Higgins. It's been over 2 years since Eileen was elected to serve the residents and businesses of District 5 as its county commissioner, representing the downtown and Brickell urban core, the sandy beaches of Miami Beach, tree-lined neighborhoods of Coral Way, and the colorful center of culture in Little Havana. What an extraordinary landscape. An engineer by trade with an MBA from Cornell University, Commissioner Higgins is considered a problem solver with a proven record of helping businesses and local organizations address the many complex issues facing our community here in Miami-Dade. As County Commissioner, Eileen has led the charge on solving the county's affordable housing crisis. As Vice Chair of the Housing and Finance Committee, she has championed increased affordable housing opportunities in District 5 in Miami-Dade County. From the completion of the Martin Fine Villas to the unveiling of the River Park Master Plan, Eileen will have initiated, preserved, or created over 4,600 affordable housing units in District 5 alone, including 500 new units at the senior campus in Little Havana by 2024. In addition to expediting and incentivizing the development of affordable housing and workforce units, Eileen has sponsored legislation that directs the administration to utilize county and or publicly owned land for affordable housing. Commissioner Higgins will be followed by Nick Amandar, who is the principal with Magellan Housing, an emerging national leader in the development of multifamily workforce and affordable housing communities. He is focused on the development, underwriting, and financing of multifamily housing communities throughout Florida. Over the last 15 years, Nick has participated in development of over 1,400 restricted multifamily apartments in South Florida with a cost basis in excess of $260 million. He has served as chairman of the board for the Florida statewide industry organization, the Coalition of Affordable Housing Providers. He has also served as board member for the South Florida Regional Transportation Authority and has previously served as a board member to the Miami-Dade Expressway Authority. Nick is also a member of the leadership class of 30. Michael Liu, our third speaker, since 1914 has led the Public Housing and Community Development Department of Miami-Dade County, the sixth largest public housing agency in the country and the largest housing organization in Florida, with an annual budget of $500 million, a portfolio consisting of over 50,000 units under various public housing, Section 8 and state programs, and annually lends over $30 million. Under his leadership, the $400 million Liberty Square redevelopment transformation, $500 million gallery at River Park, and the 6,426 unit RAD portfolio initiatives are well underway under his implementation. Under his leadership, PHC will have completed processing his public housing and Section 8 waiting list by the first quarter of 21, list that numbered over 70,000 upon his arrival. Michael's career includes service as U.S. HUD Assistant Secretary for Public and Indian Housing, U.S. Agricultural Deputy Under Secretary for Small Community and Rural Development, Senior Vice President of Duco Grayling, Senior Vice President, Community Investment Officer for the Federal Home Loan Bank of Chicago, and Vice President, Bank of America. And he's a member of Hawaii State House and Senate. He is a graduate of Stanford University and the University of Hawaii's Richardson School of Law. Our fourth and final speaker will be Harold Trey Price, who joined the Florida Housing Finance Corporation as Executive Director in April 2017, with over 20 years experience in real estate and government affairs. Harold Trey Price has extensive knowledge and insight into Florida housing needs and an appreciation to the impact that safe, affordable housing has on our state. Trey is a second-generation Floridian born in Okeechobee, Florida. He and his wife Tara have 2 children and 2 Australian Shepherds. So welcome, Trey. So let us begin with Commissioner Eileen Higgins, and we will then commence with the other 3 speakers and our exchange at the end of the 4th speaker. Commissioner?
Well, hi, everybody. It's great to be with the Chamber today virtually to talk about something that we always talk about a lot at the county, but that we seem to be talking about even more frequently because of COVID. Obviously, the intense shutdown and slowdown of our economy has caused many families, some who are very low income, moderate income, and even folks that were living pretty comfortably, lost hours or lost jobs. And so suddenly housing across the spectrum became a very important discussion item. Not just the lack of sort of the number of units we needed before the virus. So I do think affordable housing, which was a crisis before, is going to, be even greater and need more concentration going forward. As many of the previous speakers have mentioned, one of the #1 roles we had to take on as commissioners was to activate and mobilize the CARES Act dollars to get them delivered to either residents or to small businesses or organizations that employ people. And under the great leadership of Director Liu, one of the programs that has already been able to deliver aid very quickly is our emergency rental assistance program, which, because it so rapidly was able to get aid to renters who were struggling and could show that they had lost wages and were having a hard time paying their rent. We've now augmented that to where we have over $15 million in that, and believe that we'll continue to add money into that fund as the rest of the year goes by. Complementing that is another $20 million, which our friends at the United Way have helped distribute. And that program is really a basic needs program for low income families, our ALICE wage owners. So folks that are earning less than $20 an hour who may not be earning anything now, because that delivers money to them, which can help offset whether it's household costs or anything, but also can help pay the rent. And the other thing that we have beefed up is LIHEAP, which is the aid for low-income households to help pay their electric bills. Because, if you're balancing reduced hours, or maybe only one person in your home has lost their job, you may be able to make the rent, but you're struggling with the electric bill. So all of those things are front and center. And no matter where you live in this county, if you call your county commissioner's office, we will connect you with the right program that can help people basically get by and survive during this pandemic. Other thing that's important is, particularly in our rental assistance program, when people can't pay rent, it creates a trickle up problem, right? That means the landlord's not getting any income, and they also may have a mortgage to pay on the building. So we have focused on making sure that the rental payments are going to the landlord, so that we end up helping all levels in that sort of rental to building ownership hierarchy there. Eviction prohibitions, that's the prohibitions. It's the first thing we did the day the mayor declared the state of emergency. My first phone call was to the chief of police, who is our sheriff. And I said, please tell me we're not going to evict anyone. And he says, no, 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 no. As a matter of fact, the press release is going out right now. And it was true. Literally, I looked, I'm like, oh, there it is. We all know that also can put pressures on landlords, but balancing that going forward, I think, is going to be one of the toughest questions we're going to have to face in the coming year. So that's kind of the emergency response. But underneath it all, right, in our county, we have an affordable housing crisis, and we needed to continue to just work on the nuts and bolts of that. And I'm just so grateful. You're going to hear from Director Liu, who knows way more about housing than I do. But I am forever grateful that I get to work with such a true professional, because the pandemic has not slowed us down at all in District 5 on making sure we're moving projects forward to either renovate. We've got some really outdated, horrible units that have got to be upgraded. None of us would want our grandparents living in them. And also to start getting new buildings either under construction or in permitting and breaking ground. As a matter of fact, we broke ground on a new building during COVID. We've topped off 2 buildings during COVID. We have another project in Brickell that is in permitting right now and should be breaking ground in February. And we're just about to release an RFP for another mixed income community that is very close to Government Center and the river. So just because we weren't able to meet in person does not mean that the director and I were not able to work extremely well virtually to continue to move all of these housing projects forward. And I think that is what the residents expect. It doesn't make any difference. Government has to work. We have to respond to the pandemic, but we have to do everything we were supposed to do before. So I'm pretty pleased that we were able to continue collaborating so effectively despite the physical distancing. And then I'll just mention 2 other things that are in what I consider to be the continue fighting the root cause of the affordable housing crisis. Permitting. I know some of you are involved in this. Permitting, as you know, can be very lengthy. As a matter of fact, when I took office 2 years ago, I had heard of projects. It takes longer to get the permits than it actually takes you all to build the affordable housing building. So it ends up that, that's a critical path item to delivering units. It's not just financing and making county land available. And so I passed legislation that would require all projects that have an affordability component, whether it's low income, medium income, workforce housing, any affordability component, they must go to the front of the line in all reviewing departments for permitting. That was not happening. And so to Lourdes Gomez's credit, she didn't just implement, she worked on, you can do the letter of the law or the spirit of the law. So she took this to heart, and she actually looked at every process and began to revise how permitting was done in general. And so now it doesn't matter where you are. If you're in water and sewer, if you're in Durham, if you're in DTPW, if you're checking, there's now a checking the box on the electric system that says this project is an affordable project, you will receive expedited reviews and expedited permitting. She also has managed to add, again, doing, not just doing the minimum of what I asked to do, but really thinking deeply. She's added concurrent review for many more departments, fire sprinklers, drainage, paved, public works, so that can happen much more quickly, not just for affordable projects, by the way, but for all projects. And then last but not least, we used to have rework meetings, right? If you're a developer and you don't understand who's rejecting what, we would have these rework meetings, but they were impossible theoretically to schedule because we were all over town. Well, guess what? Now with Zoom, that process is much easier and has been going much better. And so now Lourdes is committed, making sure we're able to advertise and implement rework meetings because we can solve problems in an hour versus, you know, chains of emails and reviewing comments for weeks. And then I just want to point out something that was another is land banking is a solution we've got to be looking at. I passed legislation, which will be for the next mayor to figure out, but University of Miami, if you haven't seen their land tool, it is super cool. It took a long time for them to do it, but they basically have compiled every county-owned property, municipal-owned property, institutional property, let's say hospital properties, and faith-based organizations properties. So you can actually zoom in on an area and you can see 4 or 5 empty lots that might be right next to each other, but they each have different owners. So it's the first time we might ever be able to look at how we might combine across jurisdictions these 3 properties to activate that for community good, such as housing. So I've asked the next mayor, we just passed that, to come up with a plan and perhaps a couple of pilot projects, because Director Liu and I already have a pilot project, but it's a one-off in Brickell, right? We had a problem in Brickell. We didn't have enough workforce housing and we didn't have enough school seats. And so we worked with the school board to use some county land that was for housing. School board made some land available. And so now in Brickell, we're building a school and we're building housing. So we're solving 2 problems by being able to combine our land resources together. So this is a very new thing we're doing in Miami-Dade County that has been happening in many, many other cities and states. So I'm hoping that that also marches forward. So happy to answer any questions, but I'm looking forward to listening to everyone else on the panel.
Well, thank you very much, Commissioner, providing that important county commission perspective on affordable housing and the path forward. Our next speaker will provide the private developer perspective. Nick Inamdar is the principal with Magellan Housing. Nick?
Thank you, Professor, and thank you to the Chamber, our sponsors today, and my fellow panelists. I'm honored to be among you today. This pandemic has led to a number of factors that have converged to create increased pressure on Miami-Dade's housing stock, probably more so than anywhere else in the country. Many in our community have lost their jobs, remain unemployed or underemployed. This pandemic has caused significant pressure on many families that were already struggling to get by. In fact, according currently leads the state with nearly 135,000 low-income, cost-burdened renter households. That's a staggering number if you think about it. So there's definitely a high need for continued housing production and for stakeholders to stay vigilant. From the overall housing production standpoint, there's been a modest reduction in market rate residential construction starts compared to this time last year. The reduction in this housing production, and more importantly, the reduction in commercial development projects, has led to a drop in construction activity that has further hurt the local job market. The Miami Herald recently reported the construction employment was down nearly 12% from a year ago. Construction pricing, however, has not seen a downward trend, particularly due to an increase in cost of raw materials. Some of those raw materials have increased 40 to 60% since last year. So there's an increase in demand, but there's less market housing being built. There's more cost. And the real estate market in Miami is hot. As all of you know, there's a surge of domestic buyers moving to Miami, particularly from the Northeast. This is causing there to be little inventory with such high demand, especially for single family homes. And this continues to drive up our local housing prices. So a convergence of all these factors driven by the pandemic has further exacerbated the inequality in the housing market. What's the solution? Well, housing prices are high because of scarcity, so we need to build more housing. It's always a challenge to develop workforce housing, but partnering with municipalities, the county, the state, CRAs, et cetera, may aid with putting together a project's capital stack. However, subsidies and government-built projects, although critical, won't be able to keep up with the need. So government regulations such as zoning requirements have also always been critical impediments to slowing supply, and these also need to be addressed. Building requires two important ingredients, proper zoning and money. Thank you, Commissioner Higgins, for the great work you're doing on zoning issues. There's definitely been some positive movement in recent years to address some of the region's zoning challenges. From the state to the county to some of the municipalities, there have been radical improvements in recent years to what was an antiquated zoning system that really stalled the production of units throughout Miami-Dade. It's been reported that due to COVID, on average, nationwide, multifamily properties have seen a 12% decline in revenue and nearly a 15% increase in operating expenses. So staying aware of local programs to assist property owners and tenants is critical for property management teams. Miami-Dade County and the state of Florida have done a particularly excellent job in continuing the flow and production of housing throughout this pandemic. We're very fortunate to have Director Liu and Director Price with us today. Both agencies continue to facilitate the production of housing and have had tremendous success in continuing the flow of development and of redevelopment. A bulk of the government's response and programs available to aid owners and developers is managed by them. So I'll let them address those specific opportunities for assistance. And I'd be happy to answer any questions at the appropriate time. Thank you all for your participation today. Professor.
Thank you very much, Nick. As an urban planner, you really perked my ears when you got talking about land use and zoning. I'm sure we're going to get back to that later on in the question and answer session. So thank you. Our next speaker, whose name has already been referenced several times, Michael Liu, probably holds the most important position in the county when it comes to housing programs and in the administration of public housing. Michael?
Can you hear me now? Is that good?
Yes.
Okay. Well, let me say that having a Zoom meeting like this in some ways is much more enjoyable than a regular BCC meeting with all the nice words flowing toward PHCD. As Commissioner Higgins indicated, we have not stopped anything because of the pandemic. And in fact, we're doing even more than we did before here in my department. We have been involved very actively in closing on deals. During the pandemic, we actually have closed to over $500 million in TDC deals, a lot of it coming under our Rental Assistance Demonstration Program, which is a HUD-sponsored program that allows us to move on our redevelopment of public housing using a 20-year platform for funding of operations versus an annual appropriations process. And that has been tremendous in allowing us to move forward and deal with a lot of our substandard public housing and creating even a greater environment for a combination of public and non-public affordable and workforce housing, since on a lot of our sites, as a lot of you know, are underutilized. And even as of right, we believe that we'll be able to add to the 6,500 units that we're going to redevelop. On top of that, anywhere from 12 to 20,000 additional units over the next 7 years. So that's kind of been the bread and butter, and we haven't stopped there. In fact, this week, we have two big events. The opening of Liberty Square Phase 2, Secretary Carson will be down for that event. And then in District 5, Commissioner Higgins' district, we have a groundbreaking for the Robert King Hightower building, over 300 units there, totally rehabbed from A to Z. In fact, we closed on that today. We're closing on that today, which allow us to ground break and start construction later this week. So big week for us in regards to real projects happening and opening their doors. The new stuff that we've been doing over the COVID-19 crisis has covered the gamut from emergency housing through programs like the Housing Assistance Network of Dade, where we have an additional $12 million that we have to get out the door in reasonable fashion. That money has to be out by September of 2022. And then a whole bunch of CARES Act money that has to be out the door by December 30th of this year. And so we've had the Emergency Rental Assistance Program that Commissioner Higgins mentioned in her comments. We have a program assisting nonprofits. We have a program that assists landlords with now fewer than 10 rental units. We have a housing assistance programs that can help active duty military personnel and veterans, both for their mortgages and rental assistance. And we have a program that was sponsored by Commissioner Higgins to help small businesses. And all of this and the details can be found at our county website, www.miamidade.gov/global/housing/home.page. Again, that's miamidade.gov/global/housing/home.page. And if you can't manage that in a pinch, feel free to call 786-469-4110, and someone will be able to direct you to the details there. So I just wanted to briefly go over those items and look forward to some interesting Q&As. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Michael, for that valuable information. I'm sure some of this will be discussed as well in the group discussion.
I can learn to understand you much better if I.
Our last speaker is Trey Price. Just as Michael's the most important person in the most important department in Miami-Dade when it comes to housing, Trey, as the executive director of the Florida Housing Finance Corporation, holds probably the most important statewide position when it comes to affordable housing. So with that, Trey, welcome.
Yep, continue to have issues with mute and unmute. Sorry about that.
No problem.
Good to be with you all here today. I'm in my home here in Tallahassee, and great to be. I wish I was in Miami. I did live in Miami with my wife a few years ago and enjoyed it very much. But we've been in Tallahassee for quite some time now, and it's great to be back and speaking to you today. I'm going to talk a little bit about Florida Housing Finance Corporation, just so that everybody knows who we are. We were created by the legislature 40 years ago, and we're the state's housing finance agency, and we administer the state and federal resources to help provide affordable home ownership and rental housing options for the citizens of Florida. The coronavirus relief funding, of which I'm primarily going to talk about today, was launched in July, and this was $250 million of a program that was unveiled to assist Floridians impacted by COVID-19 with rental and mortgage assistance primarily. These funds were dedicated through the CARES Act that was passed through the Congress and approved by President Trump this spring. So we have several strategies in which we're deploying these funds and working with some different folks. And I'll go through that. Of the $250 million. The first strategy is strategy one, which is $120 million for rental assistance for tenants in Florida Housing's portfolio. And that's in the form of short-term rental assistance for COVID-19 impacted households residing in multifamily rental properties in Florida Housing's portfolio. We'll be dispersing those funds directly to participating properties to subsidize eligible households' rents for each impacted month of the pandemic. Going back, it's going to eventually, we're getting a few slight changes. It's going to go back to March. The rental assistance is available to help pay a household's rent and rent arrearages for those months through the end of the year. But we do have to actually, we can't pay forward rent. The rent has to actually be due first. To date, we've got over 600 affordable housing, multifamily rental housing developments in our portfolio have responded to the invitation to participate. And our landlord developers indicate that with this funding, they'll be able to provide assistance to over 11,500 rental households in Florida. We've got additional program information, and your listeners and your members who are property owners of developments in Florida Housing's portfolio, like Nick, who we work with, they should visit our website at floridahousing.org and click on the Florida Housing's Coronavirus Relief Fund for property owners and managers. There's a list of developments that have submitted the responses to participate already, and property owners and managers of those developments in our portfolio can also speak to a representative by calling our toll-free Coronavirus Relief Fund information line, and that's at 888-232-6918. That call center we've set up is open from Monday through Friday from 9 to 6 Eastern time. So again, to reiterate, this is for strategy one. We're primarily working with landlord developers with this strategy. Folks who are living in Florida Housing's portfolio can check to see, or they can ask their landlord developer representatives on site directly if they have applied for this assistance, but we don't work directly with tenants through this program. So the next strategy is strategy two, and that's $120 million for rental and mortgage assistance for homeowners and renters outside of Florida Housing's portfolio. And that was allocated to local government state housing initiative partnership offices, or SHIP offices, to administer. And that is Michael Liu, who we just heard from on the county level. The city of Miami, city of Hialeah, and I think a couple of other SHIP eligible cities also received some funds. These funds are going to be used for rental and homeowner assistance programs, such as rental and mortgage assistance payments, and possibly emergency repairs for individuals impacted by COVID-19 who maybe, are living in housing, but for their roof is, falling in and need to get it fixed. And that's able to be done by the end of the year. So impacted homeowners and renters can still apply for that funding assistance through their local government housing office. And for additional program information on this strategy, listeners who are homeowners or renters impacted should visit our website, or they can call the toll-free relief fund information line as well. And that's at 888-362-7885. The last strategy I'll talk about real quickly was $2 million for operation assistance for housing that serves persons with special needs or homeless households. And to date, 32 rental developments, that's over 2,100 units in Florida Housing's portfolio, have responded for this invitation to participate for the program. Financial assistance is being provided to these developments to assist them with coronavirus-related expenses, including extra staffing and cleaning services and supplies that will help keep their residents with special needs healthy during the pandemic. Of these 32 developments, agreements have been sent out to 24 developments with executed agreements representing over 1,500 units in Florida Housing's portfolio. So we've already got a good number of these folks taken care of. And these are primarily units that are run by nonprofits. I know there are several in Miami-Dade. I think there's at least one that's in the pipeline under construction. But as you know, these are folks with physical and mental disabilities, and they require more staffing and more money. And so that's difficult to come by at this point. So we are helping those out. And then there's a little bit of money for administration of these programs. So we continue, in addition to what's going on with the coronavirus relief funds. And the key thing again is that this money needs to be allocated by the end of the year, December 30th. And we're hopeful that our partners in county and city government in Miami-Dade are able to do that. We've got, a little over 2 months left to allocate those funds. I know Miami-Dade got several $1 million, and I know that there are lots of folks hurting because of the depressed tourism and travel restrictions that have come under effect with COVID. So we're looking forward to that. And there's also the possibility that once Florida Housing's portfolio and Strategy 1 is taken care of, that we might be moving some money to Strategy 2. So there might be an additional round of funding here in the next month or so to try and get all of this money out as soon and as efficiently as possible. So in addition to that, Florida Housing, we're continuing to do our programs, run our programs per normal. Our office is still open. We have about 75% of Florida Housing staff. We have about 130 employees. We're all in one building. But about 75–80% of us are working from home, at least primarily. I'm going in several times a week. But operations continue. We, of course, have to allocate the low-income housing tax credit, which we're doing. We're also, as Director Liu mentioned, the opening of the Liberty Square development down there in Miami-Dade. I'm not able to make it. We're a part of that and are glad to partner with Miami-Dade County and others in that development there, and look forward to that opening. We'll have a board member representing Florida Housing at that event, and look forward to our continued partnership in providing and working towards meeting Florida affordable housing goals that we have, which we know it's of crisis level down in South Florida. So it's great to be with you all today. I look forward to the chat and the questions, and I just appreciate being here very much. So thank you so much, Professor.
Well, thank you very much, Trey. I have to thank and also commend the four speakers for providing such informative presentations, and also keeping enough time available for all the questions that are being asked. So thank you, thank all of you. So I think we have questions that seem to go to all of you. So let me start with this one. Let's direct this one. Certainly, well, let's do it this way. I'll provide the question to who I think is most appropriate, and then if any of the other speakers want to add to it, please do. So let's start with this question to Commissioner Higgins. It's a question concerning how can we integrate the housing needs of the county with transportation during this epidemic so that we can increase economic mobility?
I think it's a great question, because if housing is located next to transit, we make that family's life even more affordable, right? Because they don't have to worry about a car and a car payment and all of the hullabaloo that goes along with that. And so what you'll begin to see in District 5, right? We have, District 5 does include downtown and Brickell, which has great access to trains, metro movers. 40% of the county bus routes go right into Government Center. Huge chunk of them go to the Brickell train station. So you'll see that I am not afraid of making sure that we have affordable housing projects in our urban core. They'll be mixed income, right? I think we all are fully aware that in order to make some of these deals work, we have to have different levels of rents in these buildings. But you'll see that the one that I mentioned in Brickell that also has a school associated with it will be breaking down ground in February. It's a block and a half from the Brickell train station and probably 2 blocks from the mover, and the City of Miami trolley and a number of county bus routes stop right there. Director Liu and I are working on another project, an RFP that will be released very, very soon. Just kind of on the, let me see if I get my directions right, west side of Government Center and near the river. And that will be probably a 5-minute walk to Government Center where all those transit options are. So a person that gets a workforce or affordable housing unit near transit, it's kind of a double whammy, right? Their housing is affordable, but also their transportation costs not only become more affordable, but become more convenient. We save them hours of possible commuting time during the day. The other thing we are looking at is through the Better Bus Project. 80% of our transit riders are on the bus, right? It's super fun to talk about trains, but the reality is the people that are transit dependent, are working poor families, are on the bus. And so we're making major revisions to the county bus routes to be more frequent, to be more reliable, and to create better connections. And so that will help with connectivity at some of our more suburban, meaning not near the train, housing developments. And we have put in, you will begin to see in almost every one of our transit-oriented development projects, and Director Liu may be able to comment more fully on this, there's almost always an affordability component in there. So transit is crucial to affordability. We can, you know, housing in the middle of nowhere where you can't get to your job, and you have a car payment and you've got gas and you have insurance, that doesn't help your family with affordability, right? It's your family's ability to have a high quality of life is a combination of where you live, how you get to work, what kind of job you have, and where you live. And so housing near transit goes a long way.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Commissioner. The next question I think is probably should be directed towards Michael. The question is, Michael, that the questionnaire wants to know whether there's a cap on how much money the county can contribute to an affordable housing project. They thought it might be 20%. They wanted to know whether that was true, and if not, you know, could that cap be increased to a higher percentage to promote additional affordable housing?
Well, a few years ago, Commissioner Jordan sponsored a resolution which passed, which did put a cap on the percentage of any project that we could subsidize using our surtax or SHIP fund. And for a rental project, that would be 25%. Certainly that could be changed by the BCC, by the Board of County Commissioners. But it is in line with our thinking that we are gap financiers. We, generally speaking, are not first money in. And I think at the time that it passed, that it did serve as an incentive to our developers, like Nick, like Mr. Namdar, to seek out other financing, 4% low-income housing tax credits, which are fortunately still in Florida, can be acquired without going through an arduous competition, to look toward more debt financing. FHA on the multifamily front has a lot of products now that are much more I say, much more agreeable in terms of pricing as well as in terms of processing, agreeable to work hand in hand with affordable housing developers. However, having said all of that, we are facing a different time, a different situation, and it may be worthwhile to look again at that 25% cap, and but also to look at other stacks in the subsidy layering arena to see if there may be certain circumstances where we might go beyond that. So a good question, and certainly an issue, food for thought.
Thank you, Michael. I'm going to inject a question here because Nick got me thinking in his presentation to get his private developer perspective. Nick, as you know, there's not a lot of land left in Miami-Dade. We've done our own studies showing that those limitations. But one asset that we do have that is very undeveloped and maybe undervalued asset are our commercial corridors, the so-called gray fields, and we sure have a lot of them, and not only in Miami, but obviously up into Broward and Palm Beach as well. From a developer's perspective, I'm sure you've looked at some of these commercial corridors that are very underdeveloped and have given thought to repurposing some of these locations. As a developer, what do you see as the challenges for getting into these commercial corridors, these east-west, north-south commercial corridors, where there's just so much underdevelopment, and to provide some potential opportunities for mixed use, mixed income development? What do you see as the biggest challenges?
Yeah, fortunately, we're starting to see a lot more of that, a lot more mixed income and mixed use. I think the vast majority of housing, affordable housing being built 10 years ago was pretty monolithic. It was affordable housing, usually tax credit financed affordable housing, with all units set aside at 60% AMI or below, and very little, if any, commercial space. And there wasn't really a priority to develop in urban centers. The projects that were being developed were really spread throughout the county, and oftentimes were developed in South Dade, not on the bus line, and not necessarily convenient to public transportation. Both the county and the state have taken great strides in recent years to change that dynamic. So we're getting a lot more creative types of developments now. Whether they are transit-oriented developments or whether they're in the commercial core, they oftentimes now have mixed-use components.
It's like we may have lost Nick. There he is. Okay, Nick.
So developers have become a lot more creative. The financing programs are thought about a little differently, and certainly the leadership at the county and at the state level are directing the creativity, and so I think we're getting much more exceptional sorts of developments today than we were even 5 or 10 years ago.
That's very encouraging. Michael, anyone else want to add to that? Or
yeah, I think that's very, very interesting points you bring up, Ned. And I've been thinking about this over the last few months, that the pandemic certainly brings into question the kind of mixed use we should be thinking about, coupled with the advent of online retailing. So that may, in some ways, you may limit, the type of mixed uses that you're looking for, where you might have seen a lot of retail considered, now maybe less so. Or on the other hand, will people be a lot more creative in thinking of other kinds of mixed uses that will be seen as either essential or amenities to the residents and the housing there? It can't be all restaurants. It can't be all pedicure and nail type of operations or businesses. Certainly, there may be room for some professional medical type of office space. But I think it's a real challenge in terms of asset management and analysis that developers and that the government are going to have to work together to figure out what is that mixed use component that is going to be a revenue generator for the project, and hopefully on the positive side, and as well as the type of use that will be seen as an amenity and a contribution to those that live there, as well as to the community at large. It's a very interesting time that we're in. You were involved in Midtown, over in Woodward, great retail outlet, as well as entertainment and restaurants. But certainly that's going through itself some changes as we face the future in the near, medium, and long term.
Yeah, excellent points, Michael. I guess we're all thinking about what future consumer demand is going to look like in terms of the workplace, in terms of obviously retail and living. And we're seeing it play out already, but it'll be very, very interesting. Great points. I guess this question is directed right at you, Trey. The question is, Florida Housing Finance Corporation's 2019 market study shows a need for 137,000 affordable rental units. Why does the corporation still require new proposed developments to be separated by a half a mile from projects financed in prior years?
Thanks for the question. The short answer is that we don't want to cannibalize our older developments with new ones. Everybody wants to live in the shiny new thing, and we'd be competing against ourselves. So there are some issues there. I want to also point out that there are some exemptions and exclusions. So that's not, a hard and forever half a mile, there will never be another new, Florida housing development. So I want to make that clear. Before I got to Florida housing in 2017, back in the earlier part of the last decade, Florida housing did do transit-oriented development. I urged, and we've been doing that now, especially for Miami-Dade and the request for applications for our 9% credits, because we just think it makes sense. Kind of dovetailing off of what Commissioner Higgins talked about and Nick as well. People are living differently these days, and folks, even if they're not getting on, the Metro Mover or the Metro, both of which I've ridden when I was down there, living in Brickell. Even if they're not doing that, they're getting an Uber or a Lyft ride, and ride sharing, and that still makes more sense for some people than actually owning a car and paying a ridiculous amount of money for a parking space while they're not driving their car. So it is some different thinking. And speaking of different thinking, I also just wanted to touch briefly on that is a great discussion point of what the big thing is, what is commercial real estate going to look like after the pandemic? Is this going to be the death knell of malls? Is this, I have a hard time believing that all malls are going to go the way of the dodo. I mean, people still go to I think the Aventura Mall is like a destination shopping place, right? as is, the Brickell City Center, which was going up when I was living there, and I've gotten a chance to see since. It's like shopping on Brickell Avenue is a thing like that people all over the world want to do, right? So that's an experience. It's not just I'm coming to an outdoor mall to buy a shirt. It's like I'm shopping on Brickell Avenue. It's a thing. So there's that, which is different than in the town where I'm living, where our one of our malls has died, is dead and gone, and now state office buildings, and the other is dying. So it's just a different time for commercial real estate, and it's going to be interesting to see where we go from here as far as what encapsulates that mixed use that we're looking for, where you're living in the same area of where you work, because where are you going to be working? Are we going to be working from home? All of those questions, and has the pandemic sped that up? I do wonder also, like, has the pandemic made everybody or many more people comfortable with shopping online, and getting everything online, and therefore going out, it's got to be an experience rather than just the drudgery of going to Target or the mall. So anyway, those are kind of big picture things that we try to think about, going into how Florida and our counties and cities are going to look. But yeah, we're doing transit-oriented development there in Miami-Dade again. And to circle back on it, the big thing is we just don't want to cannibalize our own. We don't want to. You don't open a McDonald's next. Only Starbucks can do that, right? You can open a Starbucks next door to a Starbucks, but I've seen that happen. And literally, I think in one of the malls down there, I saw where Starbucks is upstairs and a Starbucks is downstairs. But other than Starbucks, having an affordably priced development across the street from another one, everybody wants the shiny new thing, and we'll be cannibalizing. On the other hand, there's two sides to that sword of price of land prices. It makes the land price goes up for the willing buyer. So if there's no willing buyer for the land for affordable housing, then that takes Nick and his competitors out of the bidding war for that land. So there's always the double-edged sword there. But land prices in Miami-Dade have been and are only going to continue to go up, as you mentioned. Now Miami-Dade is really going to be looking, especially in the affordable arena, and Nick knows this, is really redevelopment, because that's what makes sense. Building way out and the border of the Everglades off of 41 halfway to Naples is not affordable housing. That's driving in for 2 hours or whatever through traffic. But anyway, wanted to touch on a few of those items in addition to that question.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Trey, and thank you for explaining the corporation's position on that. I wasn't aware of that myself. Let me ask this question, and I guess if this could be answered by either or both, Michael and Commissioner Higgins. The question is, I work for a nonprofit and would love to know how we can bring some of these rental assistance programs to our clients.
Well, this is Director Leo. I think we'd be happy to work with that questioner. If she wants to call me directly, 786-469-4106, I'd be happy to talk to her about how we can provide her organization more information that she can help to get the information out to those that she works with. We certainly would appreciate that. But again, if she wants to just take note of the web address that I gave previously, that certainly I think will go a long way toward being able to inform those that she works with about these programs. It's easy. We have right now the ERAP 2 phase 2 where people can apply online, and they can also call us and we'll walk them through the process of getting application. It's very easy. It is very, very easy. And we will then work with them directly, calling them directly to make sure that they provide us with the documentation that's needed so that they can hopefully qualify. In other words, we're taking a case management approach where we're treating each applicant that meets the basic qualifications as a client, and we will have a processor individually that will be working with that family to hopefully get them the assistance that they need.
Professor, I think you're muted if you're trying to talk.
Not showing muted. Am I unmuted now? Okay,
I can hear you.
Okay. Well, I've got you on the mic, Michael. There's another question which I'm sure you get asked a lot. What is considered affordable housing in Miami-Dade County based on the rental rate and the sales price?
Well, affordability is, this is similar to what Florida Housing Finance Corps uses, and we follow their lead in many respects, and HUD's lead is tied to income of the target group that we want to reach. So broadly speaking, for a lot of our assistance programs, we follow Florida Housing Finance Corps' definition of being able to help people for affordable and workforce housing, all the way to those who earn no more than 140% of area median income. And for a single person in Miami-Dade County, the annual income cap at 140% of AMI would be is $83,020. Now, we also have affordability set-asides for a number of our programs that target those of much lower income, those who earn less than 30% of AMI, which for a single person on an annual basis would be $17,790, or for a person who earns less than 50% of area median income, annual median income for that person would be $29,650. So we tie a lot of our subsidies to these different income groups, and then working with other programs like the Low-Income Housing Tax Credit Program, as well as our own surtax program, allow developers as well as us to come up with capital stacks that allow the developer to have set-aside units for various income groups from extremely low to workforce, and then also at the end of the day, allow the project to be self-sustaining over a very long period of time, 30 years and beyond.
Thank you very much, Michael.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question of my own toward, and I guess it's for you, Commissioner, but Michael, please weigh in, and Trey and Nick. It's a question that Michael and I have actually talked about in the past, and it comes up in other counties as well. We do a lot of work in Palm Beach County, which has a lot of unincorporated land, as well as a whole bunch of municipalities. And the question is, Commissioner, the affordable housing issue in Miami-Dade, and as it is in other counties, is countywide, in one way or the other. It's either located specifically within an unincorporated area, or specifically within a municipality like a Florida City or Opa-locka, or obviously it impacts people's jobs and where they commute into each day. So if it's a countywide issue, and where we have 34 municipalities, I believe, right now, what are your thoughts on that in terms of how we approach this in terms of from an intergovernmental perspective?
Well, I think you make a very good point. And I do think we have some pretty good collaboration. I know we, in particular, my district, it's virtually all municipalities, Miami Beach, and City of Miami. And so we do have some good collaboration on that. And particularly, we sometimes have to work on land use issues, right? It's county land, but it's in the city, right? And so every now and then we need to say, how do we make sure we can get the density that we need out of this particular property so we can maximize its availability for affordable housing? And generally, those conversations, quite frankly, at least from what I've seen, go pretty well. The county, with the 34 municipalities, some of them are not large enough to kind of even be on the CDBG fund. They're the little bitty ones, and so they would have a harder time activating. I think there's opportunities, and we've seen this during COVID. There's been some bantering between the mayors of the big cities, and I do think we can move a little bit more in a more collaborative direction, particularly around housing. What I've been extremely pleased about is Miami Homes for All did the sort of comprehensive look as to the needs of housing for the city of Miami, and then we at the county hired them to do that for us. Does that make sense? So you end up having kind of one person looking at the issues both countywide and in the city of Miami, which happens to be our largest municipality, and has a pretty good program of its own, including a general obligation bond of $100 million that the voters approved. I think that was 2 years ago, I think, if I'm remembering right. I voted for it. I should remember. Anyway, maybe it was 3, to make sure that they're activating that. So it's really important that we're pooling our money. And I know that developers who are working in the city do sometimes look for resources that can come from the county and the municipality as we try to put together a framework to make sure that we can afford to build the affordable housing.
Nick, thank you, Commissioner. Nick, do you run into this issue at all? Michael, go ahead. I know, Michael, you obviously fund projects throughout the county, and including municipalities.
Yes, and
so
I
either
think,
Michael or Nick.
Yeah. I want to underscore, I think, the point that Commissioner Higgins made about the need for a lot of dialogue, both between the elected officials, the executive branches, legislative branches, and the civil servants who work in the various planning and housing departments, especially in the area of housing, where different interpretations of what's affordable, different zoning laws can really cause havoc if they're not working together. And if we're not in communication with Trey Price and Florida Housing Finance Corps, because the low-income housing tax credit is still the #1 federal government tool that allows us to, create various sorts of affordable housing. And we do need to work more closely together. I really appreciate Trey Price. He always responds to my calls, and I think we have a good relationship, and we're going to build on that. And with the coming elections, I'm hopeful that among the municipalities in the county, that there will be a reinvigoration of dialogue, because City of Miami, there's some issues right now that we have to work out, because it's become complicated. And I'll leave it at that. But we need to continue the dialogue. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. I don't envy you in your position. Trey or Nick, did you have anything you wanted to say about that?
I think the coordination with different government levels is key from certainly a developer perspective. Fortunately, from the developer perspective, we tend to know the process to trying to get things done. As Director Liu mentioned earlier, the county tries not to be the first money in. So typically you've got to identify a site, hopefully get the bulk of the money in the form of tax credits from the state or from a different source, and then come in to the local governments for the last little gap that you need. And so the coordination of all that, the timing of all that needs to be understood and thought through prior to jumping into it. But it's a pretty established process, and it all works relatively seamlessly.
Thank you, Nick. Tanya, I think we're at a limit. Should we take any more questions or?
No, I think we can go ahead and close out. Thank you, everybody. And if AJ, if you want to go ahead and close out the program.
Thank you very much, Tanya. Appreciate that. First and foremost, as the Vice Chair of the Workforce Housing Committee, I'm honored to be a part of this presentation with you all. I want to thank our speakers, Dr. Murray, Commissioner Higgins, Director Liu, Nick and Amdar, and Trey Price. I will share one item with you that I thought was interesting. As the Vice President of ANF Group, which is a premier affordable housing and workforce housing contractor in South Florida, we have positive things ahead of us, and I can only share that by the numbers. Nick referenced some Miami Herald articles referring to downturn in construction, as well as cost issues and implications, and hiring. Since COVID happened in April, ANF Group has hired 13 employees, which represents about 18% increase in our overall staff. We have seen the market, although hit a slight pause for 3 to 4 months during the difficult times of COVID, we are back up and running, and our partners, our development partners, are eager and anxious. And to give you some of those numbers, in Broward communities, under construction, we have 682 units, and in pre-construction, which means we're working with developers to price their projects to make them, to give them the ability to actually build them. We're working on around 782 units as we speak. So the market is healthy. We are definitely excited, and it's been a pleasure being on this call with the leaders in our community, working towards solutions for the community and for the development community to produce more affordable and workforce housing products within Dade County. Lastly, I'd like to thank our sponsors, Rick Beasley with Career Source South Florida. Thank you very much. My illustrious chairman that I see over there, would like to thank you, Mr. Dr. Willie Logan with the Opelika Community Development Corporation. Thank you for your support. Wells Fargo as well, thank you very much. And ANF is always here, willing and able to contribute and to support this conversation and the construction of this type of product throughout our community. So thank you very much. And I guess I'll turn it over to Willie Logan. Mr. Chairman, you're on mute.
I think at this point, AJ, you have covered it all. We do appreciate so much for everyone participating today. I think it was a very informative conversation, and we look forward to working with everyone in the future. The Chamber continues to be the leading business organization in this community and will continue to be so in the days and weeks and years to come. Thank you all very much, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.